West Coast Cookbook and Speakeasy with Chef Justice Putnam. Netrootsradio.com.
Je voudrais du soleil vert, des dentelles et des théières, des photos de bord de mer, dans mon jardin d'hiver. Je voudrais de la lumière, comme en Nouvelle-Angleterre. Je veux changer d'atmosphère, dans mon jardin d'hiver. Ma fleur sous la pluie de novembre, tes mains qui courent, je n'en peux plus de t'attendre. Les années passent, il est loin, là je tombe. Nul ne peut nous entendre. Je voudrais du Fred Astaire.
Turning to politics, the Supreme Court has cleared the way for House Democrats finally to access Donald Trump's tax returns. The former president has fought for years to shield those records from the House Ways and Means Committee. The decision came in a brief one-page order that noted there were no dissenting votes. This means the House Ways and Means Committee, which has been seeking Trump's tax documents since 2019, can now attempt to access the materials before Republicans take over the House in January. Committee Chairman Richard Neal celebrated the decision, while the top Republican on the panel, Congressman Kevin Brady, accused the Supreme Court of, quote, opening a dangerous new political battleground where no citizen is safe. Joe, this has been a long time coming. Please. As I said, it's been years and years and years of people trying to get Donald Trump's tax returns through his presidential campaigns. And now with, 2 months or less of Democrats in power in the House, they're going to finally get their hands on them.
Well, they are, and we're going to be talking about quite a few other topics this morning regarding legal challenges, spurious challenges that Donald Trump has made to the United States Supreme Court. And John Meacham, one after another of Trump's spurious claims, whether it's about his taxes, whether it's about his stolen election conspiracies, whether it's about privilege, whether it's about the special master. We're seeing time and again the United States Supreme Court in these issues involving Madisonian checks and balances. We see this court standing steadfast and really drawing a straight line between themselves and the U.S. v. Nixon case back in 1974.
Yeah, it's important to remember that the court did the right thing in 1974. In July, it was the decision that he had to hand over that most incriminating tape, and that Nixon, after asking the question, is there any air in it, I think was the phrase, was there any give, anything for him to try to not follow it, and realizing that there wasn't, he then obeyed the rule of law. One of the ironies of Richard Nixon's life is that he broke the law, but then he followed custom and the law in leaving office. Interesting question going forward, and I think we know the answer, is whether Donald Trump has the capacity to follow the rule of law. We've seen him again and again launch assaults against it, very much in the tradition of Roy Cohn, his old lawyer, who was Joe McCarthy's lawyer. We're coming up on the anniversary of when Joe McCarthy was censured in the early 1950s. But what Cohn used to say is, don't tell me what the law is, tell me what the judge is. I think there's good news that the Supreme Court, you may disagree with the substance of their decisions. But as you say, on these important cases, they have stood by the Constitution. Question's going to be now, what does the special counsel do in all these various matters? What is the Justice Department? The Justice Department's now made its decision by appointing a special counsel. But we're entering a very complicated period that, I say it's complicated. It's not all that complicated. The issue is whether is anyone above the law? Is an American president, or let's be very clear, a former American president, really above the law? I say no. I think that most Americans would say no, and I think we're going to be testing that over the next few months.
Well, and the Supreme Court, time and again, has said no. And Susan Page, I think it's important not to conflate other decisions that the Supreme Court makes, whether you're talking about the overturning of Roe, a half-century precedent, which was shocking, but actually not surprising if you look at what these justices had said since their law school days. I think it's important that commentators don't conflate those ideological decisions with these constitutional questions regarding a president's power or a former president's power. And again, you go time and again, whether you're talking about the special master, whether you're talking about tax returns, whether you're talking about privilege, whether you're talking about all of these questions where Donald Trump's thinking, oh, they're my court because I appointed them. He's thinking they're going to rule in his favor. Not only do they not rule in his favor, but these decisions are unanimous, they're unsigned, and they're ringing, I would say, a ringing endorsement of some basic fundamental rules of law.
Yeah, you really see, Joe, the assertion of the rule of law just in the past couple days. And one of the things I think is heartening is that in several cases, we've seen judges appointed by President Trump ruling against his interest, against his wishes in these cases. I'm thinking about the Federal Appeals Court yesterday that signaled it was going to overrule that judge in Florida who set up the special master for the search of classified and other sensitive documents at Mar-a-Lago. You think about how embattled former President Trump is on many fronts. The Atlanta grand jury heard from Senator Lindsey Graham yesterday. We saw in New York the court date set for the fraud charges by the New York State Attorney General against the Trump Organization set for next October. You really see sometimes the legal system takes some time to sort things out, to move ahead, to go through the process. But I have to say that for former President Trump, this has been a very sobering couple of days for him in terms of all this network of legal challenges he's now facing.
And Willie, so much of this he should have seen coming. He thought that the judges on the Supreme Court were going to be like Judge Cannon, who yesterday just took an absolute drubbing in the 11th Circuit. Again, for those that don't follow it, the 11th Circuit is one of the most conservative circuits in America. It's probably the right's version of the 9th Circuit out on the West Coast. But I know a lot of judges. I know a lot of people that have worked in the 11th Circuit. I mean, yeah, they're ideologically conservative. They're no nonsense, all business. And here you had the 11th Circuit yesterday in this hearing make it very clear they're going to overturn what Judge Cannon did, which was preposterous. Legal scholars on the left, center, and right were saying it was preposterous. Well, the 11th Circuit stepping in and may perhaps get rid of the special master because there is no space. When you even go up to Clarence Thomas, you go up to Brett Kavanaugh, you go up to Amy Coney Barrett. If he thought he was going to get any special breaks on these rulings, he's been sadly mistaken, not only on these rulings, but let's say it again, in the 65 cases that Trump attorneys brought to federal court to try to assert widespread voter fraud. He went 0-65. This is quite a compelling argument for the Supreme Court on these issues being being straightforward and calling balls and strikes.
And this all gets to Donald Trump's mistaken mentality, which is, if I appointed you, I have impunity under you, which is to say, I did you a favor, you do me a favor, like he's operating a business deal in New York in the 1980s. And Hugo Lowell, if you look at this 11th Circuit decision, we're talking about a 3-judge panel. To Joe's point, 2 of those 3 judges were Trump appointees. So he thought he was going to get a good ride, did not. What are the implications of this? What does it mean practically now, this ruling out of the 11th Circuit?
Well, we don't have a ruling yet, but the indication was that this is going to be bad for Trump, because they were basically like, what's the difference between the documents case and any other defendant pre-indictment? And the only thing that the Trump lawyers could settle on is, well, he's a former president, and that's why he should get special treatment. And not even the 11th Circuit yesterday seemed to buy that argument, and it was a real drubbing, right? The 3 panel basically said, there is no instance in which you should get special treatment. Why should the judicial branch, given the separation of powers, be able to interfere and stop an executive branch investigation? And that was the fundamental issue at play. And I think, that's why everyone came away from that hearing thinking Trump's special masters basically didn't get terminated.
It is Friday, the 25th of November of 2022. And you are in West Coast Cookbook and Speakeasy. I am your chef de cuisine, Justice Putnam. Gunner, the English Bulldog, is our snoozing sous chef. And our daily special is Blue Moon Spirits Fridays, because we are all Nighthawks in the Diner of Life, indeed. Well, it's the day after Thanksgiving, and I suppose it's still a holiday until Monday, I suppose. And we might as well take advantage of it. And that means I am not going shopping today. I know some people were out there even before the doors opened at 5. There were some stores opening up at 5 a.m. Those poor workers. All right. Well, I'm not going to make jokes or anything, especially since we've had some tragedies from people, preparing for Black Friday. Yeah, okay. Everything's about your ledger sheet, isn't it? Everything. So I'm not going shopping. Well, not that way. But I will confess that there have been members of my family who looked at it as almost like a religious event. I'm serious. Or at least going to the Rose Parade. Yeah, we used to go up to the Rose Parade when we were kids, living in Southern California when we had moved there. And we would sit for hours in the chill of the early morning from about 3 a.m. on, sometimes even earlier, camp out sort of there along the route. And I don't know, can they do that anymore? Probably not. But we had done that. And the idea of camping out to go buy a bunch of things, it just never really appealed to me. And it appeals to enough that they have it every year. So no wonder it's like a religious event. It's a holiday. All right. Well, that's how it works in America. If there's a holiday that you can couple with some sort of shopping event or spree, let's do it. Yeah, that's called a coupling. Is it? Is that what it's called? Anyway, that's what I'm not doing today. I think I might. Now, rest assured, I know how people feel about the World Cup and everything, so I'm not really watching it. I'm just glancing at it a little. So I'm going to glance at it a little when the U.S. is playing England, because it's there. Sort of like the proverbial mountain. Yes, the unscalable mountain that we must scale. And what else? I guess there's like regular football, and there's going to be basketball. And what the hell is this cornhole thing? Why don't people just play horseshoes? Okay, stop with this beanbag and a hole thing. Give me a break. And at an angle too. It's like a carnival attraction. No, let's just pitch pennies on a plate. And they're going to have like international competitions for pitching pennies on a plate. Give me a break. All right. Well, get rid of the cornhole. When I was growing up, cornhole meant something entirely different, and I don't want to hear it mentioned on media as if it's like a normal, natural thing. Oh, my God. Jeez. Cornhole, when I was growing up, had I don't know, it was sort of like a lascivious connotation to it. I'm just saying. Just saying. Okay. Well, that's a great conversation to have right after the national meal. Is that what this time of year is? We have the national meal? Well, we did. And we did in our family as well. My sister and brother-in-law actually stayed to themselves because he's had some medical procedures. And, you know, you can't take all the light and the noise. And that was actually quite quiet there. But they're not quite ready to be doing a whole lot of traveling right at this moment. And it's not as if it was a lot of traveling, but more than my brother-in-law should handle. So got some plates brought over to them. The kids and my nephew and his wife and the kids took plates over to their grandparents and parents. And then we had my mom, elderly mom, and myself had the sit-down dinner at my nephew, and I guess that would be my niece-in-law? Is that how it works? Well, I'll just say my nephew and his wife. They are a couple, I know. Together they are. And the kids. And it was actually not as raucous, and it was quite lovely. And I ate probably just a tad too much. I usually stop, so I don't have that uncomfortable, full feeling. I always hated that. And so I got the cheesecake, and the cheesecake was actually much larger than I would normally cut for myself. And did I ask to say, oh, please have this? No, I didn't. I ate the whole thing. To my detriment, because then I was in that very uncomfortable, full feeling. And oh, my God. Oh, another little tidbit of information. I know that turkey has the reputation of having massive amounts of tryptophan that puts people to sleep, and that's why people have like heart attacks, because the tryptophan has put a strain on their heart. They're sleeping. That's not entirely true. Turkey does not have a large amount of tryptophan, actually. There are other foods that have even more. In fact, chicken has more tryptophan by volume than turkey does. Now, it could be argued that maybe we eat a little bit more turkey than we would a chicken, and I should see. I haven't seen that part codified, or quantified, I should say, but we'll look into it. But there's even vegetables that have more tryptophan than turkey, so I'm just saying, okay? Same thing that people have a misunderstanding of birch trees, for instance. They see, or I'm sorry, not birch trees, cottonwoods. They see the cotton fluff floating around and they start sneezing and they blame it on the cotton fluff. But that cotton fluff, that sort of pollen, it's too large to get into anything in your body. So you wouldn't be allergic to it to begin with. I'm just saying, there's something else floating around at the same time that the cottonwoods are doing their thing. There's another plant, and it could be the pines around here. Could be. Just saying. But everybody thinks they're allergic to cottonwoods. Oh, I see the cotton fluff floating around, and I got to sneeze. Well, that might be operant conditioning, too. Do I sound like I'm on my lawn? It's too cold to go out on my lawn this morning. We'll get into the weather later, but we're into fall, getting ready for winter. We're supposed to have some snow flurries next week. Oh, I can't wait. All right. Well, actually, that wouldn't be so bad. It's just that if there's chores to do that one has to travel in it, for some reason in my older age, I feel less inclined to enjoy driving in inclement weather. I think when I was younger, there was a certain enjoyment in it because you could defeat it. Yeah, well, you know, you drive in it enough, you just up the odds that you're going to be defeated at one point. And when you get defeated that way, it might be the last time you do anything. And I'm not ready for that yet. Not yet. Okay, enough of that. Boy, where were we going with this morning? Isn't there like some sort of untoward news that's happening out there in the world other than Elon Musk? Oh my God, that guy. All right. You know, people say he's losing so much money on Twitter, and I think he doesn't care that he has a task. He and Thiel and others decided, there's some really democratic institutions around here that we got to destroy. And then one of them is like that Twitter thing. I mean, that's worldwide. We can't have that, especially since we have a worldwide fascist uprising, and that's going to get in the way. Is that a conspiracy theory? I don't know. 2 or more people get together. It's a conspiracy, right? Just saying. And anyway, is it so much of a theory? We can look at the actual evidence, the actual tapes. We can listen to them as they plot their destruction of representative democracy around the world. It is a task that they have been tasked with, whether self-inflicted or by cooperation. And that's where, I suppose people go, well, that's a conspiracy theory. Well, sometimes people go to jail for conspiracy. They want to make the actual legal aspect of conspiracy akin to the idiotic Q-type conspiracies that just pop up in people's heads, or they're sitting around in a circle going, yeah, that would be funny to mention. Let's mention it and see where it goes. All right. We have that Posobiec still out there. I should not have looked for this guy and gone through that cesspool over there. Because you look at it and you go, wow, man, they're really invested in this like alternative reality, and they really believe it's us that are living in the alternative reality. And that's how representative democracies collapse. Because people can't agree upon just the simplest thing, and that is, what is reality? So this guy actually brought up the term blood libel. And the reason that he brought it up is because for some reason he thinks that we brought it up. That we're blaming a person who was in some ways doing God's duty for being evil. And for that, blood libel needs to be exacted. But before that, apparently it was all the transsexuals and gay people and lesbians and just, the whole gamut that they don't like. Blame them for this hate, which they've only perpetuated for quite some time. It got them some votes, so why not keep doing it? And they have been, and then people die. So yeah, I shouldn't have, in my search for this Posobiec, I was like spelling it and pronouncing it, I put an R in there, and so that was one of the reasons why I was having a bit of trouble, tracking down certain things. But I was looking for a particular tweet, and I had to stop because I just could not stand this vile tweets that he and retweets, and it's just a cesspool. And then I remembered, this is the guy or one of the guys that first perpetuated the Comet Pizza conspiracy theory about the basement being a pedophile dungeon and kids were being held there and trafficked. And then a guy went there with a high-powered rifle, long gun, and shot the place up. Fortunately, nobody died. It's indeed a family place. The only thing is that Comet Pizza Hut doesn't have a basement. Does that matter to them? They still keep showing up because they're convinced that Hillary and Podesta are down there cooking up babies in Podesta's risotto. And I'm not kidding. So I had to stop. It was enough to make me quite livid. Almost to the point of where I thought if I was poet, philosopher, king, I would not allow this type of thought patterns to keep going on, at least shared among people willy-nilly. If I was poet, philosopher, king, would I just allow free, unfettered, free speech for people to just say and do anything? No. Because I'll tell you why. Twitter is on its way to becoming Radio Rwanda. That's one of the reasons I'm not leaving. I don't want it to be Radio Rwanda because I don't want a Radio Rwanda. At least not anything more than what we already have. I'm looking at you, Murdoch. So much innuendo. Why don't we get into the curated part of the show? Because, it's sort of a holiday, but we decided we're up anyway. Might as well put a show together. So we did. And here we are. I hope you're enjoying your day and you enjoy your weekend as well. Yeah, Trump did think that his Supreme Court justices were going to be just like Judge Cannon, and apparently not, because there's been some shit going down there. And I think Roberts might have laid down the gavel a little bit in there behind doors in the chambers, I think. On the rest of the menu, the lack of Oregon public defenders has strained the criminal justice system and left more than 700 people statewide without legal representation. A Tennessee judicial panel has upheld the state's contentious school voucher law, and Ford has recalled over 634,000 SUVs due to fuel leaks and fire risks. After the break, we move to the chef's table, where Egypt announced a mass pardon for 30 jailed activists, and Australia moved to prevent a repeat of their former leader's power grab. All that and more on West Coast Cookbook and Speakeasy. Bon appetit. Of our homepage at netrootsradio.com. To the right of the page is the chat room link, monitored by Kelly Lincoln. Thank you, Kelly. Across from that chat room link near the bottom of our homepage at netrootsradio.com is the link to our Patreon page. And please help us pay our bills, please, because we need it. And if you could afford to send us what you might spend on an espresso type coffee drink once a month, it really does help us pay our bills. And I've mentioned it before, I know, but the bills keep increasing, darn it. And it's been very helpful to those of you who have helped, and we thank you from the bottom of our hearts, and that is sincere, so thank you. If you would like to follow Netroots Radio on Twitter while we still can, you can do that by going to @NetrootsRadio. Tom takes care of that. Thanks, Tom. Follow me on Twitter while we still can, @Justice Putnam, of course. And I post the show notes and links diary on Daily Codes 10 minutes before showtime, and you can access that by following my Twitter feed because the links are there. You can also follow the show on Twitter while we can, @CookbookWest, and pick up podcasts by way of Spreaker, Stitcher, TuneIn, iHeart, YouTube, iTunes, etc., 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 etc. Okay, this first offering in the Bistro Cafe part of West Coast Cookbook and Speakeasy is by, Claire Rush of the Associated Press. District attorneys in Oregon are once again sounding the alarm over the state's critical shortage of court-provided attorneys for low-income defendants. The lack of public defenders has strained the criminal justice system and left more than 700 people statewide without legal representation. Judges in Multnomah County, which is home to Portland, have dismissed nearly 300 cases this year due to a lack of defense attorneys able to handle cases. The county's top prosecutor, Mike Schmidt, said that the shortage poses, quote, an urgent threat to public safety, end quote, and released a tally this week of dismissed cases. He pledged to release new numbers each week to draw attention to the crisis. More than 2/3 of the dismissed cases are felonies. In 53% of them, property crime was the primary charge. The next most common primary charge was for weapon crimes, which accounted for 16% of dismissed felonies, while person crimes, which include assault and robbery, accounted for 12%. Months into the crisis, many are still waiting for their day in court, while others have seen their cases dismissed altogether, said Schmidt, a progressive prosecutor who was elected in 2020 on a platform of criminal justice reforms. This sends a message to crime victims in our community that justice is unavailable and their harm will go unaddressed. It also sends a message to individuals who have committed a crime that there is no accountability while burning through scarce police and prosecutor resources. The statement reflects an increasingly popular tactic used by prosecutors in Oregon. Powerless to fix the problem on their own, they have tried to force the state's hand. Earlier this month, Washington County District Attorney Kevin Barton said that his office would seek a court order requiring the state's public defense agency to appoint its own staff to represent defendants if no other attorneys were available. The head of Oregon's public defender's office said that she would work with Schmidt to address this systemic access to justice emergency. Public defense is a critical component of the public safety system, Jessica Kemp, executive director of the Office of Public Defense Services, said in an email, adding that public defenders need significant investments to retain existing staffing levels and increase capacity. As of Wednesday, statewide, there were 763 low-income defendants who lacked legal representation, according to the state judicial department. Willingham of the Associated Press brings us this next offering here in the Bistro Cafe of West Coast Cookbook and Speakeasy, Blue Moon Spirits Fridays. A Tennessee judicial panel has upheld the state's school voucher law, which allows public tax dollars to be given to families to pay for private schooling. Critics of vouchers argue that the law will weaken the state's public education system, but the three-judge panel said, that's exactly what we're trying to do. Oh, I'm sorry, I added that. They said counties and families who sue couldn't prove how students would be immediately harmed by the program. They concluded that any concerns raised now are speculative and representative of opponents' disapproval of policy. Well, that's a nice way of putting it. Plaintiffs are simply asking the court to wade into a policy debate, something we cannot do, the panel said. The ruling comes after a years-long legal battle over the contentious voucher program known as education savings accounts. Under the law, eligible families are given around $8,100 in public tax dollars to help pay for private school tuition and other pre-approved expenses, just so they can keep their kids away from you-know-who. While the Republican-controlled legislature approved the voucher program in 2019, the state has only been recently allowed to begin implementing the law this summer after the Tennessee Supreme Court lifted a key legal obstacle. Opponents, which include Nashville, Shelby County, and a handful of families, maintain that schools and students would be hurt by the voucher program because school districts lose money for every student that participates in the voucher program, and that is a feature, not a bug. And this three-judge panel says, oh, well, that's just a policy dispute, isn't it? Associated Press staff bring us this final offering here in the Bistro Cafe of West Coast Cookbook and Speakeasy. Ford Motor Company is recalling over 634,000 SUVs worldwide because a cracked fuel injector can spill fuel or leak vapors onto a hot engine and cause fires. The recall covers Bronco Sport and Escape SUVs from the 2020 through 2023 model years. All have 1.5-liter three-cylinder engines. The Dearborn, Michigan automaker said yesterday, Thursday, it is not recommending that owners stop driving the vehicles or park them outdoors because fires are rare and generally don't happen when the engines are turned off. But Ford said it has received 20 reports of fires, including 3 that ignited nearby structures. The company also said it has 4 claims of fires that were noticed less than 5 minutes after the engines were turned off. Ford also has 4 injury claims not involving burns and 43 legal claims attributed to the problem. Repairs aren't yet available, but once they are, owners should schedule service with a preferred dealer. And owners can take their SUVs to the dealer and get a free loaner, or they can get free pickup and delivery. Dealers will inspect the injectors and replace them if necessary. Ford also says it is extending warranties to cover cracked fuel injectors for up to 15 years. All right, let us now get to our break, and when we get back from that break, we will go through weather from around the world, and we will finish up with the stories that we have curated for you today. You are listening to West Coast Cookbook and Speakeasy, and we will be right back.
You are listening to netrootsradio.com.
Please hang up and try again.
From a point at sea to the circles of your mind, a new force is at work for planetary transformation. New radio for a new Earth.
This is Take Two Movie Review. I'm Clinton Johnston. This week, The Culture is Hero. Warning, slight spoiler. Let's call the Marvel Studios crew behind 2018's Black Panther Team Wakanda. Their mega hit blew way past movie all the way to worldwide cultural moment, giving the team the Alpine challenge of following it. please forgive the callousness of this assessment, but the regrettable 2020 death from colon cancer of Black Panther star Chadwick Boseman may have helped their task, for it gives the impossible sequel, Black Panther Wakanda Forever, an obvious strong focus. With the in-story death of T'Challa conceived simply, executed movingly, we, the audience, are prompted to do what the characters also must: celebrate the magic of the last film, mourn its loss, and doing thus, move forward, poised to let those who remain discover themselves and reveal their own merits. And Wakanda Forever has many merits, one of them being reimagining what has been Atlantis in the comics as Talocan, an underwater city populated with descendants of super-altered Mayans who escaped the conquistadors. It works better than it sounds, and is a bold and maybe brilliant move, as it introduces another anti-colonialist non-white superplayer. And that's Team Wakanda's real brilliance, making a culture, and now cultures, the true superheroes in their films. As cool as that is, with DC's Black Adam, we now have two movies that make feints at their villains being international political/commercial white power structures, while instead delivering in their final acts people of color fighting other people of color. And I know that when, like with Black Panther Wakanda Forever, you focus on non-white stories with non-white characters, inescapably your adversaries are going to be non-white, it still feels like playing it safe. What a cruel reality we have if you can't make culturally transgressive blockbusters without those sweet, sweet white supremacist dollars. This has been Take Two Movie Review. I'm Clinton Johnston. Catch up with us at take2moviereview.com and feed us back on our channel on YouTube.
I'm probably okay to have one more drink before I drive home. I'm probably okay. I open the window to stay alert. Probably okay. I just popped some gum in my mouth.
Step out of the car, please.
I probably made a mistake.
Probably okay isn't okay when it comes to drinking and driving. If you see a warning sign, stop and call a cab, a car, or a friend. Buzzed driving is drunk driving. A message brought to you by NHTSA and the Ad Council.
He seems sorry.
We very clearly told him not to look up there.
I'm honestly impressed that he was able to do it.
Right? What, did he balance on that big chair? Or...
Yeah, I mean, I guess he'll just know what his gifts are this year.
I really thought we had hidden them well.
If they can find their presents, they can find a gun.
911, what is your emergency?
Every day, 8 kids and teens are unintentionally killed or injured by loaded and unlocked guns. Learn how to make your home safer at endfamilyfire.org. Brought to you by the Ad Council and End Family Fire.
This is the story of a very special woman. In a matter of seconds, she turned herself into a great mathematician or an entrepreneur. Her knowledge was limitless and still is. She could also make monsters disappear, especially those that lurked in the shadows under the bed. Once, this woman put back together a teenage girl's broken heart, which had been shattered in 1,000 pieces. Just by giving her a bear hug. She masqueraded as a regular person at work, but as a superhero at home. Everyone knows her as Gabriella. I still call her Mom.
Your hero needs you now, and AARP is here to help. Find the care guides you need to help, complete with tips and resources at aarp.org/caregiving. A public service announcement brought to you by AARP and the Ad Council.
This program is presented by the Centers for Disease Control and Prevention.
Arthritis is common among veterans. Traumatic and overuse injuries during active duty are risk factors for developing arthritis. Fortunately, there are low-cost or no-cost strategies that can help veterans manage arthritis. Physical activity can reduce pain and improve function. It can also help improve mood and play a role in managing other chronic conditions, such as heart disease, diabetes, and obesity. You can do low-impact activities, such as walking, biking, swimming, and water aerobics, all good forms of exercise. Arthritis-specific classes can help you get started. Information on classes, exercise programs, and tools are available at cdc.gov/arthritis. These resources can help reduce pain and improve function. Learning self-management techniques can help all veterans become more active, improve their overall quality of life, and thrive.
For the most accurate health information, visit cdc.gov or call 1-800-CDC-INFO. This program is presented by the Centers for Disease Control and Prevention.
Heart disease and stroke can be catastrophic. They're leading causes of death, disability, and healthcare spending in the U.S., yet they're largely preventable. Alarmingly, heart disease and stroke are taking a toll on middle-aged adults 35 to 64, with over 800,000 deaths and hospitalizations in 2016. Million Hearts is a national initiative focused on preventing 1 million heart attacks, strokes, and other cardiovascular events by 2022. Coordinated actions by Million Hearts partners in communities, healthcare, and public health will keep people healthy, optimize care, and improve outcomes in populations at risk. Everyone has a part to play. Focus on the ABCs of heart health. A. Aspirin use when appropriate. B. Blood pressure control. C. Cholesterol management. And S. Smoking cessation. To learn more, visit cdc.gov/vital signs.
For the most accurate health information, visit cdc.gov or call 1-800-CDC-INFO.
This is an important message from the U.S. Department of Health and Human Services. When it snows this winter, make sure you clear more than your driveway. Before you hit the road and before you get in the driver's seat, check to be sure that your vehicle's tailpipe is clear of snow. If the tailpipe is blocked, carbon monoxide, an odorless, colorless, and deadly gas produced by your engine can build up quickly inside your vehicle, poisoning anyone inside. To learn more, call 1-800-CDC-INFO. That's 1-800-232-4636.
Hi, I'm Tom Hartman, and since you're listening to netrootsradio.com, show your progressive side and go to the donate button on the bottom of the homepage. It's progressives like you who power Netroots Radio and keep the progressive message beaming everywhere 24 hours a day. Just go to our donate button at the bottom of netrootsradio.com. Thank you for keeping progressive radio at full power.
Breaking news. After years of failed Republican efforts to uncover any proof of widespread voter fraud by Democrats, Republican Governor Ron DeSantis of Florida has found not one but 20 ineligible people casting ballots. Like Donald Trump and a gaggle of other GOP governors, DeSantis has used the phony bugaboo of an illegal voting epidemic as a political ploy to keep the true believers believing. They spend millions of taxpayer dollars on partisan wild goose chases, and DeSantis even created a new police bureaucracy, the Office of Election Crimes, to snoop on voters. It was all just silly political nastiness, but then, Ron's dragnet scooped up 20 of the diabolical culprits. Vindication. Who were they? All are former convicts who had previously been stripped of their right to vote, but each one unwittingly cast ballots in 2020, wrongly believing that their rights had been restored after serving their time. Who cares what they thought, bellowed the bullish governor. He trashed them as election criminals, ignoring their constitutional right to be presumed innocent unless convicted by a jury. Well, gosh, why did all 20 think they could vote? Because each one had properly submitted voter registration applications that went to DeSantis' state agency responsible for determining eligibility. But oops, Ron's own administration boo-booed, erroneously authorizing all 20 to get official voter ID cards. In short, the governor himself had effectively told them they could vote. Then he had them arrested and publicly condemned for doing so. This is Jim Hightower saying, now running for president, DeSantis says God has chosen him to rule because he's a fighter. But hello, he fights people rather than for them. He's a bully, and there's nothing godly about that. Nothing presidential either.
I'm Rick Smith, and this is Labor History in 2. On this day in labor history, the year was 1946. That was the day that teachers in St. Paul, Minnesota went on strike. It was the first ever organized walkout of teachers in the United States. The strike was organized by the St. Paul Federation of Teachers, Local 28. The strike lasted a month and involved nearly 1,200 teachers. Working conditions at the St. Paul schools were intolerable. Many buildings were poorly maintained. One school had just one bathroom and sink for 180 students. Some schools were heated with just one coal stove. The teachers were some of the worst paid urban educators in the nation. The schools did not pay for textbooks, so teachers often paid for books for poor students out of their own pockets. The teachers in Local 28 did not want to walk out, but decided a strike was the only way to change these deplorable conditions. On the first day of the strike, the temperature was only 3 degrees above zero. But despite the frigid weather, the teachers picketed at all 77 public schools in St. Paul. Their slogan was "Strike for Better Schools." Many across the nation were shocked that the teachers went out on strike. The strike was even covered by Life magazine, which ran a story of teachers cooking a Thanksgiving turkey on the picket line. The teachers enjoyed grassroots local support, as only 25 teachers crossed the picket lines. A ministers' association wrote to city officials writing, "We believe that a way must be found that will deal fairly with the members of a profession to whom we entrust the training of our children who are the future citizens of our democracy." The teachers won a number of victories, including salary increases and the distribution of free textbooks for students. Labor History in 2 brought to you by the Illinois Labor History Society and The Rick Smith Show.
Thank you for accompanying us here to the Chef's Table at West Coast Cookbook and Speakeasy, Blue Moon Spirits Fridays, because we are all Nighthawks in the Diner of Life. We always begin weather from around the world along the banks of the Rogue River in the Rogue River Valley of southern Oregon on the west coast of the continental United States of America, where it is currently 34 degrees Fahrenheit, expecting a high in the mid-50s. Quite foggy conditions at the moment, and will be mostly cloudy throughout the day. Winds light and variable, then steady light rain later on this afternoon into this evening, and then showers continuing overnight. Lows in the mid-30s. Winds light and variable. And then a few clouds early tomorrow, otherwise mostly sunny with highs near 50. Winds light and variable. And then beginning on Sunday, we will be having copious amounts of water, and then later on in the day and overnight, we should have snow flurries, which is what is forecast for the rest of the week. Looks like pollen is rated as none here in the town of Rogue River. The air quality index for the region is in the good range at 28 parts per million, and the daytime UV index is low at level 2. Barometric pressure is falling at 30.31 inches. Visibility is down to a quarter mile, and relative humidity is at 93%. Weather from around the world is brought to you by a crowd of crowdsourced weather stations that a crowd crowdsources from around the world. London is 51 degrees and fair. Paris is 52 degrees and fair. Rome is 56 with light rain. Kyiv is 34 and cloudy. Kabul is 44 and partly cloudy. Hong Kong is 71 and partly cloudy. Tokyo is 55 and mostly cloudy. Sydney, Australia is 64 and partly cloudy. San Francisco, California is 51 degrees and partly cloudy, and New York is 50 degrees Fahrenheit with showers in the vicinity. And that is weather from around the world, brought to you by a crowd of crowdsourced weather stations that a crowd crowdsources from around the world. Staff at the Associated Press bring us this first amuse-bouche here at the chef's table at West Coast Cookbook and Speakeasy, Blue Moon Spirits Fridays. Egypt announced late yesterday, Thursday, the release of 30 political activists from jail, the latest in a series of releases from detention amid intensifying international scrutiny over the country's human rights record. There was no immediate word on the identities of the activists, and it was not immediately possible to confirm how many of them had already been freed. The announcement came from Tariq Al-Awadi, a member of Egypt's Presidential Pardon Committee. He said the 30 had been in pretrial detention, facing charges related to their opinions. Al-Awadi later posted photographs describing them as showing several of the free detainees hugging family members and friends. Since 2013, Egypt President Abdel Fattah el-Sisi's government has cracked down on dissidents and critics, jailing thousands, virtually banning protests, and monitoring social media. Human Rights Watch estimated in 2019 that as many as 60,000 political prisoners are incarcerated in Egyptian prisons, many without trial. The issue came to focus during Egypt's hosting of the 2-week World Climate Summit earlier this month. The conference in the Red Sea resort of Sharm el-Sheikh was in part overshadowed by the hunger strike of imprisoned political dissident Alaa Abdel Fattah. As the summit known as COP27 opened, Abdel Fattah intensified his months-long partial hunger strike to completely stop any calorie intake and also stop drinking water in an effort to draw attention to his case and others like him. In the months building up to the summit, Egypt had sought to rectify its international image, pardoning dozens of prisoners and establishing a new strategy to upgrade human rights conditions. Rights groups have remained skeptical about whether these moves will translate into any lasting change, with Amnesty International describing the strategy as a shiny cover-up used to broker favor with foreign governments and financial institutions.
Je te donne ce mon amour pour la vie entière, la promesse de me trouver à tes genoux. Aussitôt que tu m'appelles, rester toujours fidèle, c'est tout, c'est tout. Je te donne tous mes printemps, mes étés de mer, mes automnes quand les feuilles tombent partout. Si ce n'est pas une bonne affaire, je te donne tous mes hivers.
Rod McGurk of the Associated Press brings us this final amuse-bouche here at the chef's table at West Coast Cookbook and Speakeasy. An inquiry into a former Australian Prime Minister secretly appointing himself to multiple ministries recommended that all such appointments be made public in the future to preserve trust in government. Prime Minister Anthony Albanese said he would recommend his cabinet accept all of the retired judges' recommendations at a meeting next week. Albanese ordered the inquiry in August after revelations that his predecessor, Prime Minister Scott Morrison, had taken the unprecedented steps of appointing himself to 5 ministerial roles between March of 2020 and May of 2021, usually without the knowledge of the existing minister. The extraordinary power grab came to light after Morrison's Conservative coalition was voted out of office in May after 9 years in power. His unprecedented moves are seen as part of a wider trend in Australian politics to concentrate power within a leader's office at the expense of the British Westminster tradition of delegating responsibilities among ministers. Albanese blamed the culture of secrecy within the former government for its leaders' extraordinary accumulation of personal power. We are shining sunlight on a shadow government that preferred to operate in darkness, a government that operated in a cult of secrecy and a culture of cover-up which arrogantly dismissed scrutiny from the Parliament and the public as a mere inconvenience, Albanese told reporters. The actions of the former minister were extraordinary, they were unprecedented, and they were wrong, Albanese added. Retired High Court Justice Virginia Bell, in her inquiry, recommended laws be created to require public notice of ministerial appointments be published, as well as the divisions of ministerial responsibilities. Morrison cooperated with the inquiry through his lawyers, but did not personally give any evidence. Well, that brings us to the end of our broadcast period for the day and the week. But you do know Netroots Radio broadcasts on, and we will meet up here on Monday for River City Hash Mondays. So do stay tuned to Netroots Radio all day, all night, and all weekend for all the breaking news as it breaks. And we will meet up here on Monday, right here in West Coast Cookbook and Speakeasy. Bon appetit.
Je voudrais du soleil vert, des dentelles et des théières, des photos de bord de mer, dans mon jardin d'hiver. Je voudrais de la lumière, comme en Nouvelle-Angleterre. Je veux changer d'atmosphère, dans mon jardin d'hiver. Ma fleur sous la pluie de novembre, tes mains qui courent, je n'en peux plus de t'attendre. Les années passent, il est loin, là je tombe. Nul ne peut nous entendre. Je voudrais du Fred Astaire, revoir un latte Goël. Je voudrais toujours te plaire dans mon jardin d'hiver. Je veux déjeuner par terre, comme au long de golfe clair. T'embrasser les yeux ouverts dans mon jardin d'hiver. Pluie de novembre, tes mains qui courent, je n'en peux plus de t'attendre. Les années passent, il est loin, là je tombe. Nul ne peut nous entendre. Ba-da-da-dum-di-da-dum. 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 Dans mon jardin d'hiver. Ba-da-da-dum-di-da-dum. 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 Dans mon jardin d'hiver. Dans mon jardin d'hiver. Dans mon jardin d'hiver.